I would like to warmly welcome you to our panel on strategic airlift, the global challenge. Perhaps the most operationally focused topic aligned to this year's conference theme, Aerospace Nation, Air, Space, and Cyber Forces in the Fight. I'm Doug RAABERG, the Air Force Association's Executive Vice President. It is an honor to serve as your panel moderator. Joining me are two incredible leaders who clearly understand the competing demands and conflicting constraints of worldwide airlift, of cargo and passengers in support of their customers and warfighters. Together, we will discuss the challenges, the opportunities, and innovations they embraced in the aftermath of global trade flows collapsing in the spring, the largest in the last 2 decades. And as a result, the coronavirus lockdowns disrupted air and sea transport. Yet, the demand for global air mobility kept both military and commercial partners focused on meeting their mission requirements and adapting to a new normal born from this pandemic. Please welcome my guests. General Jackie Van OVOST, Commander, Air Mobility Command, Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. Captain Houston Mills, UPS Airlines, and Vice President of Flight Operations and Safety. General Van OVOST, would you please provide some opening remarks?
Thanks, Doug. Hello, everyone. I want to take first an opportunity to thank the Air Force Association, Doug, for being such a great partner, not only in your educational aspects, but really your increased focus on our full spectrum readiness, our modernization efforts, and of course for supporting our total force airmen. You guys have been a really great partner for the Air Force. So thanks for putting this on. And I'm excited to be here with one of our outstanding partners here, Captain Mills from UPS, to discuss something that's at the forefront, as you said, of both of our minds during these really unprecedented times around the world. So, you know, AMC depends on a robust team of allies and partners to project our decisive strength and deliver hope all around the world. Our commercial partners are an essential force multiplying capability that really at a scale that no other nation can match. And we really value the deep relationship. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, General. Thank you very much. And Houston, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug. And, General, it's an honor to be here with you today. And thanks just for an opportunity to provide some opening remarks. I'm really excited because, this airspace and cyber conference is such a wonderful venue to bring this conversation to life. And I like to open up with just a few recent remaining positives during these trying times. I'd like to talk to you today about the idea of LIFT, which is an acronym for Life, Liberty, Pursuit of Happiness, International Trade, Flying, and Working Together. So let's start with L. As a Marine F-18 pilot, I swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, establish justice, ensure the domestic tranquility, provide for common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for all citizens in the United States of America. A country where everyone is created equal, has the right for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. UPS and other organizations at this conference believe in those values, even as COVID-19, political upheaval, and the renewed call for social justice movement has challenged our country on a daily basis. Life is sacred, no matter what your color, gender, or socioeconomic background. Liberty, freedom is sacred too. Freedom from hate, fear, discrimination, from poverty, disease, ignorance, and freedom from limitations and the right to pursue happiness is a fundamental truth to our nation. Everyone attending this conference believes in those values. That's why you're going to support the military. That's why we carriers and forwarders have joined craft to support the reservists who support us and fight in efforts like Operational AirBridge. These fundamental values will see our country, our organization, and our airlines through these most challenging times. Yes, we're mourning the losses and taking extra precautions to stay safe during this pandemic. Yes, we must step up to the opportunity of social justice and embrace diversity, especially for this audience as it comes to aviation careers. And yes, we're going through some uncertain economic times, but we'll get through this. And we'll be part of a more perfect union as a result of the struggle. So let me talk about the I, international trade. For thousands of years, trade amongst nations have promoted prosperity. Not only does trade enhance economic prosperity, it promotes health, education, and peace among nations. The pursuit of these forms of happiness are fundamental to human nature. That's why there will always be a demand for cargo and passenger carriers. And while there will always be a need for armed services to protect our societies as we pursue these opportunities. Even as global economy goes through rocky times because of this pandemic, we should remain bullish on the long-term future of trade because there will always be a demand on these healing powers. And that brings us to the letter F, as in flying. There's a lot of that going on, especially on the cargo side. E-commerce has been a major force in the world economy for several years, but emerging trends have gone vertical because of the coronavirus, and that's likely to remain permanent. Now, that's good and bad news for our friends in the military looking for lift. UPS, FedEx, and others are adding jets, but the demand is high. At UPS, we continue to add 747s, MD-11s, 767s because flying will increasingly become international, and it'll be driven by growth markets, increased demand for healthcare logistics, and small and medium-sized businesses all over the planet. So we will have jets, and we will continue to build on our global network to ensure our competitors are engaged in similar strategies as well. Another aspect of flying that I'll touch upon briefly is that of drones. UPS and other carriers continue to advocate with the FAA and other regulators around the world to continue to expand commercial opportunities with unmanned systems for their widespread use in the future. So stay tuned for further developments in this area as well. And then finally, I'd like to talk about the last letter of F, and that is T, working together. Military organizations, passenger airlines, cargo carriers, forwarders, and other entities must stay together. We're doing this for the good of our country and to protect the people. We're doing this to provide for the common defense and the general welfare. We're doing this because we want to ensure the blessings of liberty in the U.S. and around the world. We need each other. We need to remain committed to our stakeholders, and we need to remain determined. It's on that idea of determination that I'll end today with a great quote from our founder, Jim Casey, the man who founded UPS 113 years ago. And I quote, "Determined people make conditions," Jim said. They don't become victims of them. Determined people working together can do anything. So it's an honor to be here today with General Van Ovost and you, Doug, to have this very important conversation and working together to ensure that our future is just as bright as it has been in the past. So thank you.
Thank you, Houston. I would say both of us, or all three of us, would agree that strategic airlift is really a national security issue. So taking your lift, let's go ahead and lift the dialogue higher and go into delve into the issues that are relevant to each of you and your commands and your corporations. So General Van Ovost, let's start with you. Talk about COVID-19 changing everything, to say the least. How has this pandemic impacted the pace of your global operations?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I tell you, COVID-19 has had us face head on with our very first thorough contested environment, if you will. From our personal front door all the way to the foxhole, we had unforeseen limitations on things that, frankly, we had taken for granted. So first and foremost, what we did was protect our families and our airmen. But we still had a mission to execute, as you know, and frankly, as Houston knows, the sun never sets on the mission that we have out there. So while others may have had the luxury of throttling back a little bit as they tried to understand the implications of this contested environment, the demand on rapid global mobility maintained or actually increased in some areas. We still had to support the combatant commanders. We still had to deploy the joint force and ensure strategic deterrence. And frankly, maintaining readiness and watching the readiness levels so that we'd be always ready for the next challenge. And so with this new environment, we had to look at things in a new way. And frankly, everything we did had to be looked at in a new way. We had to innovate to safely move our passengers and protect our air crews and our maintainers and those that passenger processing folks. We had to find ways throughout the flying squadrons from start to stop, from doing everything virtually to get into the airplane and get started, to new aircraft cleaning methods. Again, same kinds of things that Houston has faced, to reviving our transportation isolation system that we had put into storage after 2014 with Ebola, getting our new procedures updated and making sure everyone's trained on moving passengers, to recognizing that, frankly, those systems were not large enough. We needed something much larger to move possibly infected patients around the world as we foresaw the spike that was going to occur. So in 90 days, from the back of literally a bar napkin, then 90 days later, we developed something called the negatively pressured Connex, which allowed us to fly exposed patients, both ambulatory and in litters, about 3 times as many, we had 3 times the capacity when we bringing those things on than the transportation isolation system. So really, innovating end to end to try to continue to make the mission, and frankly, make the mission better. From our commercial partners who we really relied on, they had to help us go out. We got charters to go rescue American citizens, which are essentially stranded overseas, and bring them back to America because of the commercial system shutting down. And they helped also with our medical supplies. We flew gray tail or organic aircraft medical supplies out of Italy into one of the hubs for one of our commercial partners, and then they flew it around the United States, exactly putting our strengths together to ensure that our nation's citizens would be protected. And then Air Mobility Command and our Deputy Commander for Transportation Command and all of our commercial carrier representatives, we got together every week to talk about the challenges we faced. We had to have that very open communication so we could work together to protect our aircrew and passengers. We came up with new passenger processing and procedures to handle cargo and people. And frankly, we had to get together to solve the daily anti-access issues, which we would normally think of in a conflict environment, that we were having daily because different nations were implementing different procedures daily. Sometimes they were shutting down. Sometimes they limited you to certain airports to certain times. So Doug, we relooked everything, soup to nuts. And we're not putting anything of that on the shelf. We're taking those lessons learned forward into all kinds of environments, congested, contested, all the way to high end.
Wow. Hey, let's take that on the same note, because Houston, I'm confident ops continues to run high at the cargo airlines, especially UPS and other partners. But your new CEO, Carol Tomei, she took over in March, I believe, just as the pandemic hit home. So talk about a challenge, just like General Van Ovost. But so what is her view of UPS's role now in global commerce and the impact on thinking about the future? Because again, we're talking about mission readiness, innovation, having to really go into an entirely new environment to be able to meet the needs of your customers, stakeholders, and shareholders. So Houston.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting, like General Van Ovost said, coming in right in the middle of a pandemic and coming in right in the middle of, probably one of the biggest social justice movements that are going on, it really provides some very unique, challenges, because we both, employ a very diverse workforce. And so all those issues have to be thought about at the same time. So, our CEO, Carol Tomei, came in leaning in. She came in leaning in, really understanding the role that UPS plays in the global marketplace, and how our unique ability and infrastructure really uniquely places us in position to be a very critical infrastructure provider, not only in the United States, but around the world. So really, we think about from a UPS perspective, and she would tells us often, there's really three things that we need to make sure if we're going to be successful. We need to think about three things. One, we need to think about the needs of our stakeholders. What do they need? We're a service before self organization like the Air Force. Our founder is all about service, so we have to think about the stakeholders and position ourselves to make sure that they're successful. That's area number one. Second, we need to make sure that the quality of our people is taken care of. We've got quality people. We're a people-led organization, so it's very important that we take care of our people. Sometimes in this type of up-tempo environment, and people are, Americans in particular, we're driven to be very motivated to give 110+%. But as leaders in particular, we need to make sure we're taking care of each other, and give folks the opportunity to go back in the rear and get a break while someone else steps up, because the tempo, sometimes we get so focused on the tempo and the mission, we can forget about the people. But if we're going to be people-led, our CEO said, hey, let's make sure we're going fast, but let's make sure we're taking care of one another at the same time. And then, as General Van Ogles talked about, from an innovation, we certainly believe that our ability to innovate and to be flexible and adjust and to think through challenges and solve for the most complex problems that perhaps you don't know until they're in front of you. And with us having over 528,000 employees worldwide and operating one of the largest logistical organizations in the world, and we've got over 30,000 engineers that are part of our organization. So we've got critical thinkers. We have problem solvers. So we think about our umbrella in terms of what guides us. We think about customer first, people-led, innovation driven. That's kind of really our umbrella. So as we think about e-commerce, we think of it through that lens, and that's kind of how we see it. But we do believe that e-commerce is certainly, as we look in the future, is really driving things. This pandemic is accelerating e-commerce to a level that quite frankly we knew was here, but it's really accelerated. And as such, fortunately for us, we've been focused on three verticals for a long time, and that's e-commerce, healthcare logistics, and small and medium-sized business growing both markets. So it just so happens that this environment aligns with some of our competitive strengths. So we're very fortunate to be in position to support the world and to be prepared to be a great partner, General, with the Mobility Command when those critical needs are there, because that's what we do. So in fact, and from a readiness perspective, I'll kind of point to FEMA and Operational AirBridge, and where we're called upon by FEMA to come, and we've delivered so many PPEs and other critical supplies in support, working with the CDC and many other organizations, is because that's what we do. And our ability is not just in delivery, but we have over 1,000 logistic facilities around the world. So we're able to leverage our logistics expertise as well to our delivery expertise and our multimodal integration. And because we cover the ground, the air, and even shipping, we can bring that full integrated support network of 500,000 plus employees together to really provide unparalleled type of support. So when we think about the future, we think about not necessarily getting bigger, but getting better. It's about making sure that we leverage the resources that we have, we're using them to the best of our capability, and that we're being smart on how we tackle some of the big challenges that are in front of us.
Well, Houston, that is incredible insight from the leadership. I'm going to take your lift, so let's keep lifting higher. You talk about life, liberty. I'm going to add leadership. This is an important factor as well as taking care of your people, so as to be able to accomplish the mission. So General Van Ogles, from the leadership level, the pandemic seems to have been a real test to Air Mobility Command and the airline industry that together partner you have, a whole set of them. And especially moving to forward to, but yet operating in a contested environment. Would you expand a little bit more on your efforts to prepare for that challenge?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Look, for us, it all starts with a national defense strategy. And national defense strategy is the why in everything that we do. And we've been getting after that full spectrum readiness because we have to be prepared, right? There's no telling what the next contested environment is. And this pandemic has just laid that one out in spades. So some of the things we did before COVID as part of our full spectrum readiness is we've done a lot of exercises you probably know from operations in chemical, cyber denied environment, GPS denied environments. And we continue to leverage, the new and innovative technologies to increase our capabilities and our resilience in this contested environment. And a lot of our industry partners have been helping us with new ideas along that way. And so that's been very helpful. So one of the lessons learned operating globally during this pandemic was the importance of access and the necessity to prepare for essentially a rapidly changing global environment, which you could see during a conflict, as you would have, different nations involved in the conflict, how things could change politically. Again, we see some real relationships here with between the two. But one of the things we want to herald is the strong partnerships that we have with our allies and partners, and their flexibility during this crisis, essentially, their flexibility to allow military or military chartered aircraft into their nations, because we were able to keep the mission moving because we had those relationships, which is, the day-to-day that we work with these different allies and partners to ensure those strong relationships. And frankly, our commercial carriers, with their global operational networks and the relationships that they have, we were able to work with them. They actually acted as sensors for us in some of the areas we had not been in, or frankly, they just have more reps and sets going through that airspace or into that nation. So we were able to communicate back and forth very quickly as we watched the global environment change and share that information with respect to our contacts back and forth, and being able to get op stops for them, getting op stops for us. So it really showed the power of our relationships and how they work. Like you talked about with respect to leadership, right? That's what it's all about. Relationships that cannot be transactional. It's built over time, built over trust, such that when you have a conflict, we're able to work together. And that's exactly how it bore out. With respect to what we would have seen before the pandemic, as you probably know, all of us, to include UPS, we're under attack daily with cyber, right? And you see that in your bank accounts. You see it when you get phishing emails. We see it in all of the sectors. And so we are not immune to that. So we're operating under that sort of congested environment. We also see issues with global positioning system, with GPS, which is critical for our navigation. So we train to navigate without GPS, right, and find other ways to ensure the safety of us and our partners when that occurs. So again, to have the relationships that ensure that we can be agile, we can ensure we have that access, and we can be resilient in order to deliver our different missions, is what success is all about. And allows us to ensure that we have the credible capacity where we need it, when we need it, for our different missions.
I think this is going to be even more of a rich dialogue based on that, because when you are talking about access and being agile, what I'm also hearing is innovation that you want to be enduring and capitalizing and make it even stronger in the future. So Houston, let me take it along the same lines, if you don't mind. How have pandemic-driven requirements and related health conditions affected mission readiness? And can you give us some lessons learned? And General Van Ovost, I'll pose the same question, if you don't mind, if in terms of how you've seen those pandemic-driven requirements and maybe those related health conditions affecting mission readiness. Houston.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, especially for someone like us who operates about 2,200 flight segments to over 220 countries on any given day, delivering about 21 million packages. In fact, back in 2019, we delivered about 5.5 billion packages around the world. So this pandemic has really, stretched us, to address some things. First of all, to make sure that we're absolutely protecting our people, as General Van Ovost talked about. The big thing is making sure that we can provide an environment where people can take care of themselves. That's mission number one. So that's with the N95 face masks, that's with good social distancing policies, that with hand sanitizers, that's with ensuring people are monitoring their health conditions before they come into work. That's actually getting people to think about not only their own health and safety, but the health and safety of others, to report to work when they aren't feeling well, not because they aren't motivated to come in, but because doing so could harm others, particularly in this environment where folks are traced. So one person who doesn't feel well can take out 10 or 12 people and that certainly could adversely impact mission readiness. So we've learned a lot through this process, through constant communications, through ensuring that our pilots and our mechanics and our people have all the support and equipment needed. We ensure that our facilities, our aircraft, our workspaces are properly sanitized. And quite frankly, when someone does have a positive case, we're transparent. We make sure information is communicated so people aren't speculating about why. There's nothing to hide. We're focused on the mission at hand and getting things done. So as this pandemic has kind of moved forward, we've really become very good at ensuring those communications. The other thing that we've learned and we've depended on, at least here in the industry, is our government affairs team, so our public affairs team, because as General Van Over's talked about, there's different rules for different countries. And in order to keep our network together, we really had to work on attaining exemption status, or critical infrastructure process, to make sure that our folks are still able to move commerce around the world without being shut down. And so when you're on an all cargo flight, we're able to very restrictively move our pilots from point A to point B to hotels with private transportation, all those things to really minimize the risk for certain countries. So we've done a lot of collaboration with the DOT and others to help get that message out and to work, through the State Department and others to ensure that some harmonization of rules is certainly something going forward that is much needed. I'm very privileged to have worked on a special working group with ICAO where we talked about the harmonization of policies. And because early on, it was a little bit different wherever you went. And we were trying to accomplish the same goal, but that need to have some type of harmonization going forward for future pandemics becomes something that's very important going forward. So certainly, from a safety perspective, from a government relations perspective, to ensure that you've got access to move. And then the last thing I would add that we've learned is the ability to repatriate. When someone, does become ill or someone that's been traced and has to be quarantined, different parts of the world, not everyone has world-class medical facilities. So our ability to take our people and repatriate them to get them the proper health care has been another ongoing challenge that we continue to work through and try to solve for.
Houston, I see how both of you, your different enterprises, have to cross the globe, whether it be the Indo-Pac Pacific Theater to Africa and beyond, and its intra and inter-theater operations. So General Van Ovos, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of come right back to the similar question. Have these pandemic-driven requirements and related health conditions really affected mission readiness? And what lessons have you captured?
Yeah, I would just ditto everything Houston Mills said. First of all, it's about our families and our airmen and taking care of them, preserving that force, right? And that was job one. And just like the rest of the American public, not having childcare facilities, the children are home from school. How do we take care of them yet still have folks that can generate missions and go on missions and go deploy forward? Right. It's all, we are feeling the same things as the community. Our mission may be a little different, but, I'm empathetic to people that just have to go to work day to day. And how do they take care of their families, and how do we protect, our parents, our aging parents with our exposure, and how do we telework? So we've done a lot of work on the telework side, providing secure capabilities at home to do work, to ensure that we can, preserve the force here in the different offices that we have, so that they only come in for a minimum amount of time, then go back home. So I say that the Department of Defense has done some great work with respect to IT, and so my hat's off to industry and the teams that did all that great work to get us there. And frankly, we don't want to go back. We think we can really leverage the pipes and the secure capabilities that they've given us in lots of other ways. So in the end, I think it'll be a readiness generator. But for right now, we were able to maintain the readiness level because we did nominal things. We wanted to make sure not only did the airmen and our families, but as we went about our daily business, how do we get the job done while protecting them? Through things like clean corridors, making sure we take special crews that are necessary. For example, those that fly the President of the United States or the Secretary of State. We essentially, shelter them. We sheltered, crews that deal in a nuclear area, and we just put them together for 14 plus days at a time, and kind of an A and B team, so that we can keep the readiness going and preserve them in a bubble while they're on. That necessarily requires us to really look at our entire inventory. As you know, we're around the world for where our crews are. And then if in an area we're hit fairly high with COVID in one area, we would expect that we would need them to stay home, fly less, and we would go somewhere else and increase the workload at that area, say for C-17s out of the West versus C-17s out of the East when Charleston was hit pretty hard with COVID. So we've had to really balance our readiness in different areas. And then finally, when it comes to, how do we delivering on the mission matters. One of the reasons that we have these clean quarters and we protect our people is, we go down to the ice mission in Antarctic is going on right now. We absolutely cannot afford to bring anything there that could harm any of the folks there on the ice. So again, we get to a location, we do 14 days, we ensure the cargo and the aircraft are clean. We ensure on the ground, we don't have contact with those there on the ice. And I could say that for a number of key missions, but it is something you have to put up with. It's something that you have to ROM for and preserve the force for. And it's a little bit of a setback when you think about efficiency, but when you think about effectiveness, it's the right thing to do. And again, we could take these lessons forward to actual competition if we needed to.
I'd like to stay with you for a second, General, because I think this is important, because let's step to capacity and the future. In our prep session together, you indicated Air Mobility Command relies on commercial augmentation for about 40% of your routine cargo. And what surprised me is 90% for passenger lift. With a volatile travel market, as we've seen in the news of today, even in the Wall Street Journal, and commercial partners adjusting fleet availability or size, are you concerned about possible loss in capacity?
Yeah, I tell you, Doug, it's critical that we maintain a viable, ready, and safe, commercial partnership so that we can surge in wartime and do our day-to-day competition operation around the globe. Frankly, we understand that our commercial partners, they have to make business decisions. So where we can help is that we can increase our transparency, our reliability, and predictability in the requirements and our requests to them for flying capabilities around the world. Being predictable in that way allows them to really look at their futures to see what they can count on for business and proactively manage their contracts, their partners, and their air crews, and frankly, the types of fleets they need out in the future. So again, this allows us to maintain, our craft capabilities and our organic readiness, which, as you know, it's a balance of commercial and military for wartime, while essentially meeting our steady states. Now, the other thing we look at is that we want to ensure we have a wide range of capabilities with our commercial partners. That is, from your 747 cargos to your 737s for passengers. We don't need just simply bulk. We need a combination of capabilities that will allow us to do different things around the world. So as they size the fleet, and they look at the different requirements that we have given them historically and what we may give them in the future, and we share, frankly, our operational plans so that they have an understanding of where we're going. And we want to ensure that we don't unintentionally reduce capacity. But the capacity piece, I think, is really, it's not a concern. We've been so transparent and so close in how we've been working through this pandemic. And frankly, the way that we do contracting, that, it's not a concern for me. But I want to take advantage. I want to take advantage of the developments of more efficient fleets, both in cargo and in passenger carrying, using those technologies that industry is coming up with, and take advantage. As I watch, for example, Houston, that beautiful 747-8, I want to make sure that as they develop those airplanes, that they can still carry the military 463L pallets, so that we can move pallets from our organic aircraft to commercial and back through cross-flow operations. So I wouldn't say it's an overall concern. I think that our relationship is such that we can actually grow better together.
Well, I can only imagine from your command position, the amount of collaboration you have to do to get insights from your combatant commanders and your industry partners to be able to define what your needs are for fleet modernization to be able to assure that capacity for the future. So I'm going to throw it to you, Houston, because I think this is important. Let's do shift to that fleet modernization efforts, because I have to agree with the general. That's a beautiful 747-8 in the background there. They're not cheap. We understand that, but you had to make a business investment to modernize. And that's what I want our audience to understand, is that there's also an investment aspect to this, a financial one, but it's also taking care of your customers, again, your stakeholders and shareholders. So from an industry point of view, does aging of the Civil Air Reserve fleet change your business model as to what aircraft to maintain, perhaps retire, or buy to meet the demand? And I'll throw another question back at you in a second, but hey, any things the Air Force should be thinking about to address that modernization, since I kind of gave you a little heads up?
Yeah. So great question. And really, I'll be honest, I think in general, and OVOST, I think you framed it up perfectly. In terms of the things that you all are thinking about are exactly the same things that we're thinking about from an industry perspective. I know, for us, and Doug, you said it exactly, we purchase aircraft based on the demand of our stakeholders, our customers, right? And that growth is what drives, the renewal and investments of new aircraft. In fact, we're in the middle right now of a pretty significant investment of several $1 billion to add about 50 aircraft to our fleet. So those are 747s, -8s, MD-11s, and 767s. And when we're complete with that, by the end of 2022, we will have added 10% capacity and very much an upgrade to modernization to our fleet. So that's certainly important. And also when you upgrade, as we're looking for these fuel efficient, capable aircraft, the 747-8 that you see behind me is able to carry about 50,000 more pounds, yet deliver about 16% in fuel efficiency. So from a business perspective, to do more for less is certainly in our purview. We've invested millions of dollars in our 767 to put winglets on all of our 767s because they deliver about 4% in fuel efficiency. So they allow us to serve customers with existing resources without necessarily over spending. So I think, and we'll continue to upgrade our fleets as well. We're from a modernization perspective and readiness perspective, we're making millions of dollars in investments in our existing inventory to upgrade the fleets with modern technology that will be capable to be mission ready and support a variety of activities, both internally and externally. And then lastly, I would say if I, from an industry perspective, just thinking about in general, I think you nailed it just in terms of aircraft that are capable of supporting, a craft mission. And and I think there's incentive opportunities for the Air Force to think about to incentivize those uses. You look at the A340 or the 777, for example, there's tremendous capability out there, but they aren't always necessarily bought into craft. So how do you, as we think about all this extra capacity out there, and particularly with the downturn in the passenger industry, how would the Air Force think about incentivizing some of those opportunities so that more of those aircraft can be brought into the program? I think for carriers like us who have very unique aircraft that are currently capable, it puts a lot of demand on to meet the other demands of the customers when you got one of the few aircraft in the world that can meet all that need. And so I think just kind of making sure there's a balance in that perspective will benefit the Air Force and benefit all the industry, and not necessarily put undue pressure on any particular company because they happen to have that particular type of aircraft that's needed. So as I'm thinking about the future, that would be one of the things I would just add to the conversation.
I think in terms of the here and the now, the way you both have described the challenges, but the way you've passed through the innovation, you want to go forward. I can only imagine your strategic planning is anywhere from 5 to 10 years out, obviously for long lead items that you may need and what you see the future as. But General Van Ovost, kind of like industry, you two must also focus on the digital future of command and control, perhaps seeking technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics. So if you project out 5 to 10 years, what does the future of global strategic airlift really look like in Air Mobility Command and for the combatant commanders themselves?
Yeah, thanks. So we do spend quite a bit of time thinking about the future, and it's really all defined for us, again, in the National Defense Strategy and our ability to maintain full spectrum readiness to compete across the continuum, from, as Chief would say, we do leaflets to nuclear bombs, right? And everywhere in between. So we know that we're going to be operating in a multi-domain contested environment. Again, we see a little bit of it right now with the cyber. We see a bit with GPS, with jamming, and frankly, there are others out there that wish us harm. So in order to continue to think about how we retain the advantage, we must get to the data advantage, right? What we deal in is physics. We need to solve the problem better with new ideas and with the data and providing that information. So thing one for us has been the Joint All-Domain Command and Control. What that allows us to do is have a data backbone to understand and sense what's going on around us and help us connect all the sensors and make these decisions at a strategically relevant pace. You've heard the Chief of Staff of the Air Force talk about how important JADC2 is. But frankly, when I look at what we do and what the commercial partners do, we've even seen it now, that they need to be part of this network solution. Because again, the global access, political landscapes, things change all the time. And if we have capabilities that are riding upon organic airlift or our commercial airlift, we need to be able to contact them in flight when things are, in flight as things are changing securely, in order to ensure that no kidding, this is where we want them to go. We can make decisions for them at pace. So what we've been doing is we've reached out to the commercial industries. We are providing them a secure capability in their global operations centers, as well as phones, essentially secure capability to talk or to communicate on board the aircraft. And we think that's pretty important for the future of where we're going, because again, we expect to be jammed early on in any sort of a high-end conflict. And then next, what to do with that data? Well, I'll talk about big data. Those are two big words, big data. But it's really about how do we get the infrastructure in and the sensors on so that we can collect all of that data and actually make decisions with it. So we took a play from our partner's playbook over there on something called conditions-based maintenance, where this is pretty standard in commercial industry, where they're looking at all the sensors on board the airplane to try to predict what may fail before it fails. We had a fly to fail mentality because that was more efficient, we thought, because we could fly the part right to when it failed. However, it's not efficient, right? Because it takes time. You could be out in the system. You may not have the part. So we're doing this predictive maintenance. So we're taking parts off the airplane before they fail. And we're finding that it's really gaining a return on investment for us. So we're going to continue to do that. The KC-46, our new aircraft, our new refuel aircraft, will be fully already outfitted when we get her. But we're re-outfitting our older airplanes, our legacy aircraft, so that we can ensure that we get better reliability, maintainability, and better efficiency on those airplanes because we're doing that. That's just one example of the way we're taking data and trying to improve our position with respect to reliability and effectiveness here with all of our missions, all of our mission sets, air medical evacuations, our support missions, our air refueling, and our airlift. But I tell you, when we think about how do you harness that, and we're looking again, industry has been out ahead of us, and we're watching them very closely, and we're trying to incorporate all their lessons learned with respect to how to harness this the best way. But we know that in the end, it's not about an industry partner showing up with, hey, this is a cool idea. In the end, it's about our digitally adept airmen who are innovative and they're competitive and they're thinking about better ways to beat the physics. They're thinking about better ways to make decisions that is going to ensure that we retain our advantage in the future.
That all comes together in the last tactical mile, especially when you're airdropping to very critical needs for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Space Force professionals of the future. So thank you, ma'am. So Houston, the shot clock says we got about 4 minutes remaining or less. So let me jump right to request to give us a final thought on what opportunities you see industry seizing, because you kind of alluded to it in your opening remarks, perhaps maybe drones.
Yeah, so I think just kind of looking in the future as we think about enhanced capabilities, certainly in the world of drones, there's certainly opportunity there. And there's still lots of rules to be played out. Obviously, the military has incredible capability globally. From a commercial perspective, I'm very honored to be part of appointed by Secretary Chow to be part of the Joint Advisory Committee, which advises the FAA administrator on what the UAS policy should look like and strategy should look like. So I've been working, on that committee since 2016, and certainly there's a pathway forward, but there's still a lot of work to go. But certainly, as we look at expanded capabilities, one of the things that we've looked for partnerships. We partnered with a company called JACQUELINE to deliver, urgent medical supplies in Rwanda to hospitals back in 2016. We created a program that we started as an entity here at UPS called UPS Flight Forward, and basically started to deliver medical deliveries on the Wake Med campus in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, to expedite deliveries of critical medical tissues and other supplies on the campus, cutting the delivery times down from 30 minutes to 3 minutes. So the innovation that General Van Oofs talked about really speaks to the opportunities ahead of us. And certainly that's something that we're thinking about as the rules emerge. We don't want to wait for the rules. We want to be there going along and being prepared. We've been part of a lot of conversation trying to help shape the policy so that there's a level competitive field, and then also that we're ready to contribute. Now, we don't see anything changing with our legacy operation. I know from a pilot perspective, and I happen to be an active captain on a 7576. Pilots come in all the time, hey, are you taking our jobs away? And we say, no, we made billions of dollars investment in these large fixed wing aircraft because our pilots are going to be here for a long time. But we also have to innovate and think about the future. And so there's going to be new opportunities for a whole different breed of pilots, which is going to bring more capability, support the U.S. Transcom as well.
Thank you. General Van Ovost, final thought, please.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I tell you, I wanted to add on to the discussion about we don't get there just with items, just with things that we tend to develop with capabilities. Is about our people. And so I'm going to just harp on also what Houston talked about, which is, what will really truly accelerate us in all areas, STEM, in commercial industry and military, is taking advantage, unleashing our people with folks that are put together, folks that have diversity of thought. That's how we're going to accelerate our capabilities, because those that can come to the table and they feel like they can talk about it, they're trusted, and we can unleash them to go do great things. That is our superpower. It's a superpower as a nation. And so as we go around our craft partners and AMC, we are unstoppable. We deliver around the world. We're showing that great American flag and showing them what such a diverse workforce can do around the world. And that's it, Doug.
Thank you, ma'am. Wow, this has been a lot of fun. I want to personally thank you both for this insightful discussion. It's been a pleasure to have you, with us here today at AFA's Virtual Airspace and Cyber Conference, we affectionately call vASC. And I want to thank you, the audience, to those who tuned in to watch this panel called Strategic Airlift, the Global Challenge. Now, please be sure to visit AFA's booth on our exhibit hall. We are offering a special on half-price membership during our virtual conference. Thank you.